Yeah, it's a video
It's a
game.
TV in game.
It's a TV in instead of a tabletop.
Man.
It's sort of funny.
No, it's not.
The concept is funny.
No, this is sort of funny.
Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
Nolan.
And this is episode 414. And the question of the week, what is the best multiplayer arcade game of all time?
Mortal Kombat.
Ooh,
Straight to the punch. Straight to the uppercut.
I figured Nolan was going to absolutely just go either for a fighter or like one of the shooters that's multiplayer. The ones that come to mind for me are not those. I think of the X-Men game.
So
I think
good.
of Simpsons.
So
I think of Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
Like those to me were top tier like multiplayer experiences.
Right, but y'all
So which
went
one
to
of
the
them?
arcade for different reasons because
Right.
Nolan wanted to go and beat people up.
Yeah, he wanted to go and beat people up. I was going to avoid getting beaten up.
Well, the beauty of this question is it depended on what your pizza place had, first of all. So my Pizza Inn had Mortal Kombat, the Police Academy game or whatever, and it had Ninja Turtles. I love Mortal Kombat. I think the original Mortal Kombat, or even MK2 in the arcade with someone, even if it's a random kid that wanted to play, is like peak multiplayer arcade experience.
I didn't have much fighter experience in the arcade because I've never been that big of a competitive person. I did play. We've talked about this before. Is it one of the Tekkens with King in it?
Yep. Yeah, Kings
and so I know
staple.
that I played that one a lot, but I don't have anything else to add here because Kenny kind of cleared my list. I think The Simpsons and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade, like that key one.
That's what it's called.
Both of those are.
Yeah.
I think
Those are some
that's
of
what
the
it's called.
Yeah.
So both of those are phenomenal. I mean, I didn't have it on my list, but that X-Men
What's
one
the
is
Simpsons
also
one?
That
sick.
X-Men one is
It's called The
insane,
Simpsons,
too.
and it's an arcade game where you can play any of them. If you're riding around on your not a roller coaster, on your skateboard,
portable roller coaster.
and you pull it up and beat the enemies with it. That was I didn't watch The Simpsons, but my dad played,
Really?
and my dad's not a gamer, but my dad played that game with me in the arcade from start to
arcade.
finish.
Nice.
We put in all the coins.
But he didn't want you to watch
That's
the
a
show.
lot of quarters, probably.
I don't. Yeah, probably.
You
didn't
should
want me to watch
rewatch it as an adult. It's still really funny. So was Hit and Run like based loosely on that maybe original concept?
Totally different kinds
Totally
of
okay.
different, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love when we get to have these conversations because they don't let these great games from the arcade remain dead in the grave. They resurrect some of the heroes of our past. Like in our retro game of the week, Dungeons & Dragons Heroes.
Overview.
Dungeons & Dragons was first published in 1974 and was designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson as a tabletop RPG.
Too bad we didn't
That's
play
not
that
what we're
this
talking about.
week.
Soon after, Pork and Beans was brought
Oh,
to
come on.
the world.
All right, listen, viewers. We did one D&D one-shot. No, you can't find it on the internet. Get over it.
Honestly, I did try at one point, not this last week, to go back and listen to some of it. It is very embarrassing, and I don't...
I'm sure it's so cringy.
There's some things that we do and we know it's silly, but hey, we're having fun, but we shouldn't have.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't have happened. And then,
That's one
like,
of
in
them.
hindsight, we just, like, cringe out.
That was some conversation about the old school Dungeons and Dragons.
Something completely else.
But this week, we played Dungeons & Dragons Heroes, a 2003 hack and slash, but why not action role-playing game, which is what they consider Diablo to be.
Good question, actually. There's some differences we can talk about.
Slight differences, but I think you can
I hear
call
you
this
out,
an
though.
action
Okay.
RPG.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I hear you.
Though we shouldn't because of just our history there.
Came out in 2003 for the Xbox, exclusive for the Xbox.
Right.
In fact, I think our first Xbox exclusive
Oh.
on the podcast.
Yeah, usually
I
came to
think so,
Windows as
yeah.
well.
Right.
There's some
Or
crossover
to
there.
even other consoles, you know.
Or to
But-
other consoles, but like Microsoft would port a lot
Right.
of those games. That's really rare for for a game, and also one of my least favorite exclusives I could name to you. I don't love the Xbox One.
The console. Like,
Correct.
he doesn't get hyped about
Got you.
that console. So when you hear something is
Correct.
exclusive, it doesn't do anything for him. For clarity, in case the things Dustin said initially were a little confusing, Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop game. Dungeons and Dragons Heroes is a TV in game.
TV in? Are you?
You thought to clarify
Whoa.
you would say that? What are
He
you
made a
saying?
whole section for that joke.
It's just a bad
That was a
joke.
joke
You can
that
leave it
he
and
needed
move on.
all of our attention for?
Do you remember how earlier, Kenny, we were talking about how we do things, and then later we're like, we shouldn't have
Okay.
done that?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
What you just said is true. But Dustin, you also know that the time that you have us record is in the mornings, and you're gonna get this out of me every once in a while.
I do want to
accept
leave
it.
this, but I do
Accept
it.
need to. You've got to
Accept
slip
it.
in jokes, not reserve entire segments.
I tried, but y'all were talking about other stuff.
So then let
but
it go!
It hooked itself too deeply in me. It shouldn't have. It was not worth it. We're on the same page about what happened and how big. Of a
I thought
mistake
you
it
were
was.
going this route. That's a tabletop game
Yeah.
about fantasy stuff. This is a completely different thing, is what I thought you were going to say.
Right,
because
which
it
would've been
is,
Well, it is a
helpful.
completely different.
But okay,
Yeah, it's a video
it's a
game.
TV in game.
It's a TV in instead of a tabletop.
Man.
It's sort of funny.
No, it's not.
The concept is funny.
No, this is sort of funny.
Delivery was poor.
This TVN game was developed by Atari Interactive, published by Hunt's Ketchup, and it is going to. It has already been mentioned, but it's going to probably receive some Diablo and even some Baldur's Gate comparisons this week, and also
Gauntlet.
some. And Gauntlet,
Well, maybe.
and also traditional
Mario.
tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, because it's all connected in some way. Not Mario. That's the only one that was mentioned that it is not really connected to.
I bet I could draw the conclusion.
I'm sure that you could. However, I don't think that you have to know. Okay, here, I'll say this. I think that you could play this game without Dungeons and Dragons knowledge and be completely fine. I think playing Baldur's Gate
Sure.
3 at least, because I watched a little bit this week. Maybe, hold on. Maybe Dungeons and Dragons Heroes inspired one of us to pick up a Dungeons and Dragons game this week in
Frick
Baldur's
off.
Gate 3. We'll
Nolan.
talk about that. But I think you need more D&D knowledge with Baldur's Gate 3 than you do with Dungeons and Dragons Heroes.
100%. I'm a testament to that. I don't like D&D, like playing tabletop, and like I don't know anything about it, and yet I can play. It's fine. You don't need that.
The story for Dungeons and Dragons Heroes is that 150 years ago, 4 warriors from the kingdom of Baal fought a glorious battle against a malevolent wizard named Caden. They succeeded in defeating Caden, but it cost them their lives. And so today, 150 years from that moment, a group of evil clerics resurrect the slain wizard, the evil one, and a group of good clerics revive the 4 heroes, or in my case, the 1 hero. And now the battle begins anew. The heroes of old to defeat the foe of old in a campaign of tabletop D&D.
Gameplay.
So this is just Diablo in playstyle, and I'm not even mad about it. But
it felt very much Diablo. You've got red pots, blue. You got red health pots, blue mana pots. You're breaking everything and getting gold drops. Like
isometric view. The only thing missing are the orbs for health and mana in the bottom with your skills on the bottom.
they're not one-to-one, and we'll talk about some of those differences because some of them do matter a lot.
Well,
But they're more practical differences because this is a console game. But
but presentation. I'm talking about
philosophical
presentation.
differences. Yeah, the concept. If you looked at this game, you're like, oh, that's kind of like Diablo, and you're not far off.
Hearing D&D, I thought we were in for a much more slow-paced game.
Right.
Which I think
like
is
an
fair.
RPG that was going to be like deep in D&D systems and I've played some of those games and been overwhelmed or confused or any number of things in the past.
But this has Diablo hack and slash looting written all over it. And the isometric view kind of above camera angle is what I mean when I say this feels and looks like Diablo. So people have a reference point. It's not like third person. It's not first person. It's looking down at your character as you fight enemies that come in waves and you fight bosses and loot.
And really, there's only two things that I can point to that are D&D connected in deep ways, at least. A variety of the enemies are from the monster manual, you know?
From the universe, right.
And
yeah,
then,
there are overt references to their stuff.
And then the stat sheet, right? You've got your strength and charisma and dexterity and, you know,
D&D calls those abilities, and I hate it.
Because, yeah, really, they're abilities or skills? No, I get confused on what they call what.
I call them stats where I'm from.
Those are the two things that are connected. So again, what I said previously, you can go into this game, not know D&D, and it's completely
and it's fine. Yeah,
fine. Yeah.
Like honestly, right. Like I said, okay, D&D clones, and this isn't a clone, but D&D style games. Sorry, what am I saying? Diablo style games that are not Diablo. Typically, I'll throw in the garbage bin. Because the execution's wrong and the depth is not there. And I'm not saying this is like a super deep game, but on the Xbox, this is kind of a welcome format in my opinion, because you don't really have a lot of other options besides Diablo, which wasn't on Xbox that I know of. So, and it was a nice surprise is what I'm trying to say, because I would have done the slow-paced, more in line with D&D tabletop stuff. I would have done it and humored that, but this just felt familiar, and I liked that.
Let's set the picture a little bit more, because we know you're looking over your shoulder, isometric style. You're playing, it's sort of this action RPG thing. But some other places that it feels sort of Diablo-ish, but is a little bit different and console-specific, is your 4 classes and your ability to play those sort of sit-and-go couch co-op.
Mm-hmm. Gauntlet style.
If you, right.
Yeah.
Have somebody hop in and out as they will while you're going through the story is a really cool concept in my mind.
Your 4 heroes are pre-established because the events happened 150 years ago. And so you have an option of one of those 4. And so you've got your human fighter, you've got your elf wizard. No.
Standard.
If you're going to comment on one, you need to comment on all.
I had to decide what I was going to say about the elf wizard. I was thinking standard.
Oh, well, wait.
Dwarf cleric.
Best.
I knew you were
I wonder what can halfling rogue.
Also best.
Okay.
You just love the shorter kings.
In my
fantasy.
first play, I said these things, and I want to know if I was correct or incorrect. As I was selecting my character, Nolan, you watched my first play.
I did.
Kenny, you never commented on it.
Kenny watched it.
I most certainly did.
He commented on it before I did, actually.
Oh,
yeah. You're just thinking of every other week.
He's getting it mixed up.
Although the previous week, Nolan didn't watch Kenny's first play.
I didn't. It was a weird week. Yeah. I had school.
As I was going through those characters and selecting, I went boring. I acknowledged it. I went human fighter, in part because I thought I knew what my compatriots would select, and I didn't. I wanted us to have a varied experience. And so I thought that I would pick human fighter. I was correct. I thought that Kenny would either pick elf wizard or dwarf cleric, and then I was fairly confident that Nolan would go halfling rogue. Was I correct or incorrect?
You think you know me?
You were close.
Yes, I think I know you.
I did not go halfling rogue this week. Because
you went wizard?
No one's throwing me. I'm sorry, because he also just created a Baldur's Gate 3 fighter with a massive sword. Nolan is hitting a midlife crisis.
I'm hitting a midlife crisis in game. I'll tell you why. All right, you're right. The old me would have gone rogue, no question. Sneak, steal, thief, kill, like stealthy. But I'm kind of tired of it. In general, and I've done the elf. Like I'm over the elf thing. Like, okay, I went a human fighter.
You've changed.
I think you're a bad influence. On
I
it.
wanted to smash things, and I wanted to try something different, and I wasn't feeling magey.
If you wanted to smash things,
And I like tall people.
do the stout character with a giant hammer.
That wasn't
Come
an option.
on.
Well, cleric has a hammer.
Dwarf cleric is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Who did
Oh.
you pick, Kenny?
I don't like cleric class though. I don't want to heal anybody.
I did play as the dwarf cleric, but mostly because you assumed I was going to, and I wanted to just sort of be on the nose for this week. I would have chosen any of them except human fighter.
Dungeons and Dragons
To play
heroes
through.
would have been cooler if you could mix and match. If you could have been a human thief, like you can in the real tabletop. I get why they probably had to have set classes just because memory's sake.
Just
I
makes
don't know.
it easy.
It makes it easier.
It also works for the story here, where it's specific heroes. You're not
Sure.
creating,
That's
a
true.
story.
That's true.
Like
Yeah,
some like RPGs and D&D. You are
there are 4
finishing
heroes.
the story of this already established character, so it would have been harder to like figure out how to do that.
That is interesting. I didn't think about that. You're picking up a campaign in some ways that was dead and now is
Right.
revived. I like that.
And so you are playing one of these characters, and I would imagine that these characters operate pretty differently. We'll talk about some of those things, but you're doing the same thing. So you're going on this adventure where you are fighting enemies, you are leveling up, you are distributing ability points and skills, and you are completing quests as you go from the crypts that you were resurrected in and that you've been the last 150 years to find the Ankh of Evernear in order to escape, to go to Castle Bale, to go through portals, to retrieve the planar gems so that you can fight and defeat Caden again. You're doing the same thing no matter who you are because you're one, or as Kenny had mentioned earlier, 4 if you got 4 friends sitting on the couch with you. Oh, yeah.
So fun.
Would have been so.
I mean,
good.
yeah.
I hate when we can't do that. We'll talk about that in a bit.
But be able to, go together as the 4 warriors. Think about that.
And along the way, you're collecting shards of
baby.
your old epic weapon.
That's the best thing about
helped
this
you
game.
in this original quest to restore it to its former glory and give you the strength to defeat the big bad guy. It's standard fantasy fare, but like in all the best.
y'all are getting me excited for
The
something.
soul shards restoring your weapon to its previous glory is a highlight for this game. It's tied to the story. There's a visual change when you hit the thresholds of the shards, and it gets stronger. Yeah, that's cool. And it's like Ultima Weapon. It's like that idea in Final Fantasy where you find the Ultima Weapon. It always feels so good when you get it. And I didn't get end game, but it's super strong at the very end because it's back to its.
If you're able to locate enough of those
Sure.
gems, I think with every 5 it powers up, and so it starts
5 out of 20.
It starts as a fine weapon, but then you'll find some other weapons that are better. But
Yeah.
but if you collect enough of them over time, yeah, as we've mentioned, your weapon becomes the weapon of legends, and then you use that in order to defeat. I love
It's a
that
clever
concept.
So fun.
sense of progression.
fun.
Like it makes you feel stronger, and that's what you want. You want to give that player, especially in a game like Diablo, you want to make when you're making changes to your class or you're picking up items off the ground, you want to feel that power spike, and that's what that is. And so I thought it was pretty smart.
Now that we've kind of set the tone and set the scene, can we talk a little bit about how this controls and how the gameplay works? Because I'm just so used to this model of game to be PC.
Yes, click
same.
where you want your character to go, and they walk over there.
Yes, I'm so used to that. But this
Same.
week, being on the Xbox, you're playing on an Xbox controller, and and I guess let me just start by saying, and y'all would have a lot more wisdom in this because you guys have played a lot more Diablo and stuff like that than I have. But I felt that the button configuration and the handling was done pretty well.
I agree, and
Agreed.
So I had a few different trains of thought this week because Diablo 3 was the first game of that type to introduce console controls because it came out on consoles, and that was a big deal. And Kenny and I scoffed at it when that happened because we were never going to play an action RPG with a controller. And I'll tell you why. It works so great here, and I'm like, why couldn't Diablo do that sooner? It's because and here's what Kenny was maybe scoffing at earlier when we were making the comparison. In Diablo, you have your skills and they work synergistically, and you need to be able to on the fly click those pretty fast and mouse over where you want to click them. In this game, it really is more of a hack and slash. I didn't play a mage, but I assume it's shooting projectiles and things across the screen. So that's so much easier to do in this game with the controller. With Diablo, there's a lot more going on, and precise controls are needed. Here, they're not needed, and it feels great.
And you're sort of equipping a kit here. The UI is smart about limitations in the console, so it gives you quick button ways to swap between the skills that you do have, but then those skills that you selected are just mapped to your buttons. So you can just run around and do the primary things you want to be doing, and then very easily switch a context. Oh, I'm about to be at a boss. I want to do this thing. Oh, this thing's about to be dangerous. I want to bring up my heal, whatever else before getting into it. And even on the fly a little bit.
Yeah, that bullet time menuing feature is down. Great. More games need to do that. It was so comfortable.
Absolutely. It's very smart implementation there, and it kept it simple, but easy to change, easy to understand, and didn't overly complicate things. Which is sort of a requirement in my mind for doing this on console at a cost. I still think the experience is better overall for this genre. Like on PC, it's a different kind of game, but it works for a sit down and sort of hack and slash your way through this adventure, experience.
Although you can have a variety of abilities, like in Diablo or something, you don't immediately have access to them all the time because of the limitations. You're basically going to be in my case, I was basically using 2 abilities, because you can preset 2 abilities to be used at any time, along with a throwable. That's your B, right? Isn't that like a throwable? And so my 2 active abilities that I was using most for my hero, this is actually interesting because it would speak to a little bit of the diversity here, but I guess I used a few, but I used one that allowed me to do a different kind of attack. It was like a back thrust attack.
Yeah, the backstab.
Backstab. Because there were some enemies that had shields, and you can't really get through that, but that backstab would do tons of damage. So I'd use that, and then I alternated between, there was one that allowed me faster movement speed, and then or like attack speed, movement speed, I think. And then there was another one that took some of the damage I was receiving and put it back on the enemy.
Thorns. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was
generally a pretty weak mechanic in Diablo, but
oh really?
In that game, and here it obviously works. I like the flurry rush one for the fighter, which was just, I think, the faster movement speed one that you were talking about, and I used the backstab.
And the backstab,
yeah. I think it was backstab's kind of best in slot. I gathered on reading about the fighter, so I was just like, I'm going to use that. I wish you had a couple more options for melee or just for your main too, but I mean, and you do.
It just takes a while to get those points, and you have to wait on them and build them up to be able to use them.
Some of the really cool skills are gated behind fairly high expenses, so you gotta make that choice of save up all my ability points and get that thing early, or just really wait until I'm late in the game. Have a diversity of smaller cool skills or 1 or 2 really big skills. So that was kind of fun that you got to have some character choice. There are a huge amount of skills, and so I didn't get to experience all of them, but one of the ones that you get sort of as you start for cleric are healing, obviously. You get some hammer swings. You get some cool fire-based skills. I was able to shoot this little wall of fire out in front of me that was kind of fun, and a big rush, an offensive move forward, knock people down kind of skill that's just nice utility to have, and some others, but pretty standard stuff for the type of character it was. I think they kind of lean into that pretty hard on all of these.
You do have a kind of hub area, which I thought was smart too, because in Diablo, especially Diablo 1 for you, Dustin, you really enjoyed this, where you have the town that you can go back to shop. And that's similar here, where you've got the dungeon to where you can port back. And I think the costs there are travel stones. I don't remember what they call them, but in order to go back and forth between it, there's a cost. But I think that's a great balance, and just to have like a safe zone to shop. The items in the shop I felt were kind of entry level. Maybe that cycles. Maybe that gets changed later as you get farther. But again, I just kind of found myself going there to just reset. And
it's always more fun in these games to find
Yeah.
an item. I don't know. It just feels
Absolutely.
more worthwhile. And they did a good job of giving you some kind of cool stuff to find, but keeping some of the better findable things like hidden and reward you for exploring.
yeah, hidden walls and
One
stuff.
of the, there's lots of chests to open everywhere all the time. You're picking up so many keys and opening up so many chests, but they also do a good job of having some like hidden areas that if you're going out of your way to fully explore the map and hit stuff and check behind stuff, that you're going to get some cool like bonus items, which is fun in these kinds of games.
Which I learned my lesson early on, to open a chest and run, because there are
Yeah.
trapped chests that
There's
will
trapped chests.
explode on you.
chest.
And I died a couple of times to those. Thankfully, you can find items that resurrect you on the spot, so you don't have to go back. And guys, you can save at any time. I'm just not used to that with
Huge.
console games. You can
Yeah.
out of battle, you can save at any time. When you come back to the game, you'll be at like a previous save spot, but you'll still have all of the experience or items
changes,
that you
yep.
gained during that time. I thought that's nice.
Yeah, that is
That's
unique for
it's
a
a good
console.
in between.
One more thing. It takes a while to get to the first boss, but there are bosses in this game, and I did want to mention them. I say it takes a while because my first play, we try to keep our first plays brief, right? 10, 12 minutes. And I cut mine down because this might have been my longest first play that I had to cut down. So it's only 12 minutes or so.
Oh, new
but
record?
it took me an hour or so of playing
To get through all of that
to
content.
get to, because I
Absolutely.
wanted to get to the Ankh, before, like I wanted to do something.
Right.
But I play these games, unlike Kenny and Nolan, which, by the way, I've tried to play Diablo with them before, and they just run away from me and go so
Nolan
fast.
is dad, and I try.
They go so fast. I want to explore every nook and every cranny, and I want to fight every enemy, and that's not what they're doing. They're blazing boys.
We could play a game together, Dustin, but Nolan
I
couldn't.
bet we could.
You skip the story in those games. That's the problem.
No, that's part of the experience.
Okay. What's the story of Last Epoch, Kenny?
What? No, we're
don't
not.
know.
Exactly.
We're not doing that. Bosses, though, I thought they were unique. They're not just big damage sponges. This first one that you're fighting is like this big armadillo kind of creature that has a hardened shell, and there are.
You got to do the environmental interactions to kind of get through that. It was fun.
And I'm assuming those are straight from
D&D big
enemies,
big bosses.
Okay.
big
Because I know
monsters.
Beholder.
The Beholder.
The Beholder is
The big
one,
eye
the famous
with
one.
the
Yeah.
big famous.
Yeah.
And so, I think they did well with those, where you could have just had a big damage sponge where you're trying to like survive. No, you're trying, in this first one you're using environment, and a second one you're like maneuvering and trying to get space before attacking. Like there's always some unique attacks or opportunities there. I thought that was very welcomed.
Aged.
Due to the age of this game, the way to emulate causes some frustrations and issues. Not as much as I expected, but the Xbox is not where some of the other consoles are. It's much easier to emulate PlayStation 2. It's much easier to emulate GameCube or even Wii. But Xbox struggles for some reason. And one of the very noticeable things here is that when you're watching there's a lot of cutscenes. They're at about 2 frames per second.
Yeah. And I don't know what the deal is with that. Anytime there was one, I would go watch it on YouTube in good like frame rate. And when I did that, they looked great.
Yeah.
But it's just unwatchable, and you'll see it in the first play too. If you go watch Dustin's, it's got some huge choppiness for that, but the gameplay itself was smooth. That emulator is like the only one that I know of for Xbox One, Zemu.
Yeah.
And
it's come a long way in the last couple of years. But
Definitely has. I bet this game was unplayable just 5 years ago, But
yeah, the general hurdles of finding a way to play this game today, however you choose to do that, are going to be higher than
because
they
exclusive.
will with some other things that we've played. Yeah. So that is a reality worth pointing out. And one that I absolutely fought today. Like, half of my time this week was as a hero fighting enemies, and half of my time was as a person fighting technology.
Troubleshooting.
So
Yeah,
totally get the frustration there.
if you look on the Zemu website, it's got a compatibility page there, and out of all of the Xbox games, it says 4% of them are perfectly playable. 4% of them. However, 80% they have playable, but it means there's I think Dungeons and Dragons Heroes would fall unplayable.
Yeah,
it's playable, but you're going to notice some things. But as Nolan said, the cutscenes. So I actually went and watched some of a Let's Play because I wanted to make sure this wasn't original, like it wasn't the fault of that, and it's not. And the cutscenes are good.
Solid.
And
I think they're very good.
I think they're voice acted well, which again, that's hit or miss in games often during this era. But voice acted well. I thought they had a lot of character and charm. It's very traditional fantasy, so you're not getting anything new here. But I think what it does well.
Yeah, they had a lot of fun with like depth of field in those cutscenes, and the 3D shadows looked really, really good. And I can see when I watch those cutscenes, I'm reminded of some people who argue that Xbox One had the best cutscenes at the time, like graphically, and I can see where they're coming from with this. And I didn't even expect that with a game like this, because a D&D Heroes, a D&D game, I wouldn't think they'd invest that much in the visual aspect. But cutscenes are solid, dude. Graphics with the rest of the game, I thought were quite solid. Textures look nice, and they didn't go for super realism, which was the right choice. And then there's like a nice variety of areas too. It's a pretty good looking game.
I was never blown away by the visuals, but they worked. They looked nice. They weren't distracting. They weren't ugly. They communicated what they needed to communicate. So I agree. I think they were good.
And you don't have to with the isometric view.
I was about to say,
you don't have to go crazy detailed, which is
kind of
good.
Not the point.
It's convenient, right?
This genre of game, you're not like, the graphics, unless it's cutscenes or something.
Yep.
Right.
It's not meant for that. We mentioned it. Yeah. It's meant, maybe first and foremost, to be a multiplayer experience.
Yeah.
And you cannot do that today unless you're sitting side by side on a couch
with the worst controllers in the world in your hand. Frustrating, because like you said, I think that's the core of this game. I think I think someone can play single player and enjoy it. Yeah. But I think you will really unlock the game when you have 2 or more players in the dungeon. Come on.
If the three of us could have played this week, if you've listened to this podcast any length of time, you know that if we ever get to play a game together, it kind of brings the game up a few. People are mad at us for our Superman ranking, and they think it's just because we played it together. But playing this game together. Any game, but playing this game together would have taken it to a whole new level, because we're doing different things. Someone's a mage and doing magic. Kenny's healing us with his cleric abilities, I'm assuming, if he's able to.
If he's feeling right.
And
I may not. I may just choose to heal myself.
The way that that was set up is that you could hop in and out at any time. You can come and be a different level. You could have even imported a character. I don't really know how that would have worked, but you could have had your own character that you imported into a multiplayer campaign. So I think all of that's brilliant, and all of that is lost today.
It's defunct. Yeah, it is.
It's a bummer.
I think someone probably listens to us and gets frustrated when we bring this up, because they're like, no, just play it on the console. Like, yeah, duh. Who has an Xbox, worst console of all time, who has this game, and then who has 3 other friends in the same location? In the same location is important, because
people don't have friends today, and people don't live in the same place today.
Right. It's a lost beauty of gaming that I long for and miss, and I really think the essence of this game lies in doing that. So it sucked, but we didn't get to do it.
The essence of Dungeons and Dragons lies
That's
in.
true.
Can you
You
tell
can't
yourself a
play
compelling
that.
story?
True.
Maybe.
Yeah, you
They
can't play that
didn't
alone.
call this game Dungeon and Dragon Hero.
Good one.
One dungeon, one dragon,
That's
one
two,
hero.
Kenny. That's two. You're at your limit.
It's not a series, other than it's connected to the Dungeons and Dragons universe. So I'm sure there's other D&D games. Sure. By the way, D&D. What do y'all know about ampersands? Do we want to have that conversation?
Oh, I'm very pro.
Ampersands, like as in the symbol?
The and sign?
Yeah.
That's
Oh, in the title of this game. Pro. It looks nice.
I wasn't asking for or against, but I'm glad that Kenny, are you pro or are you against?
Yeah, I'm pro.
All right,
Pro.
you've
It's
heard it here. We're all for the ampersand.
It's a
We're all
pretty
voting
symbol.
Ampersand into office.
Oh, it is pretty with the
Yeah.
curves. If you want a copy of this for your Xbox to play with your pals locally, $11 used or loose, and it's $78 new.
There's okay. A little high for me.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. Kenny, what do you think about ampersand's D heroes?
It's a single ampersand. Yeah. So I'm feeling rather generous. So I'm gonna say yes, New Game Plus status. Let me caveat though that this is a pretty light game. It is a little bit slow at times, and the gameplay style leans a little bit repetitive. I think this is a fine one to pick up if you're wanting something to sort of fill some time. You play a few minutes at a time, you pick it up, you enjoy as sort of a casual little adventure game, and then you set it down and repeat. It's not something you're going to take super seriously, but the process of playing it, I think most people will generally enjoy. So, yeah, pick this one up. Just know what you're getting into, and on principle, make sure that you play Cleric, because Dwarf is best.
I'm going to start talking not knowing where I'm going to end up.
Oh, interesting.
Because this game does nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, on the other hand, do anything incredibly new or exciting. It's a game. It's
one of them of all time.
It's one of the games of all time. Where I'm like on the teeter-totter is that I didn't have a bad experience, but I can almost guarantee you that a month from now I won't remember this game. And the things about this game that I liked just kept making me want to play a different game this week, Diablo. Like I was like, and I know that when we do this and whether or not we give New Game Plus status is not a comparison and contrast in that, oh, this game did it better or this game did it worse. I think in some ways it is, but in some ways it's a standalone, what was our experience this week? So here I am. I had a good and fine experience. I think it's going to be somewhat forgettable. I don't think it did anything novel, but I don't think it did anything bad. I'm going to just be on the other side of Kenny, though, and I'm going to say it's no New Game Plus status from me, simply because of its forgettability. It's fine, and it's a game, and it's better than a lot of games that we play, and not as good as others.
It's totally fair. It sounds like you're hedging, but that's just the kind of game
Yeah.
it was. And again, I said it in different ways, but I think we're in pretty similar places. I just was on the other side of that decision, but not by a lot.
So
Nolan gets all the power this week.
Yeah,
right.
that doesn't happen often.
Human Warrior.
So the name Dungeons and Dragons Heroes is a branding trick, in my opinion, because this game, while it has the standard fantasy classes, races, and enemies, which D&D started in the first place, by the way, everyone else borrowed from it, it doesn't lean in as hard as you might expect to the franchise. And I think some will have an issue with that. In fact, Dustin, I thought that's what you were going to say, is that it being a Dungeons and Dragons game, technically, that it didn't have enough of that in it. But for me, instead they chose to borrow the isometric playstyle and the hacking, slashing, and looting of Diablo, and the whole gauntlet co-op style. They went that route, and I think that's so smart. Because it works, and there's not a lot of other games on the Xbox that I can name, any of them, for that matter, but any of them like this experience, and it actually kind of pulled it off. So it's janky at times. We didn't really get into this, but the camera's pretty solid here. But like going through doorways sometimes can get clogged if there's like enemies. It's got some things. It's got some issues. It's not like the smoothest gameplay, but the reason why it works for me is that it's not Diablo, and I'm not having to go really like kind of study a build that I want to do and spec into the certain kind of playstyle. It's presented at the beginning. Yes, you can unlock more abilities, but they always end up falling in line with the character theme. And I just think a game like that can and should exist. I'm going to give it a New Game Plus. I thought I had a lot of fun. Like Dustin said, I can't find a lot wrong with it. And I enjoyed my time. And yes, it got me in the mood for like Final Fantasy or fantasy RPGs. So I bought Baldur's Gate 3 and it helped me create a character. So I'm a high elf fighter. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So thanks to Dungeons and Dragons Heroes, Nolan is now.
It was a gateway
Nolan's
game.
finally playing the latest popular game.
It's a
and
gateway
we're
game.
starting a new D&D campaign.
I did want to add an NGP, but I'm also adding at the end, I hate the Xbox. That's all.
Well,
he did make 14 digs about it all throughout the episode.
Dungeons and Dragons Heroes is New Game Plus certified. But what did you think? On YouTube, our poll said 13% yes, it's worth playing today. 4% no, go play something else. And unsurprisingly, 84% have never owned an Xbox before.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Many in our community played along and wrote in. Garlisle said, when I looked at this game up, I was seeing reviews from Xbox fans saying this is a hidden gem of the console. One of the best truly Xbox exclusives they got. And to them, I say, I'm sorry.
I get it, but I also get the people that were hype about it because it is a good exclusive for them.
The Docta45 said a few levels in, and these are my impressions. The story is serviceable for the genre. The combat is good, and combine that with up to 4 players, and you have a solid game. The bosses are fun, if a bit simple, but I could imagine playing this with 2 or 3 other people would make the experience more enjoyable. I like the variation in the classes as well as the skill system. Not a big fan of the inventory and itemization, but again, that probably has something to do with it being intended for multiplayer. I'm probably going to finish this game over the weekend, or at least get a little bit further. NGP for me.
Very nice.
Yeah.
It's always going to come down to not having co-op options.
In Diablo, can you share? Can you trade inventory items amongst between one another?
Yes.
Yeah.
Drop
Do you
them on
think
the
you would
ground.
be able to in this one? Oh, just drop and pick up.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you can in this one too. Land Ale said, it's hard to talk about this game without comparing it to its contemporaries. However, Heroes was one of the better looking hack and slash RPG games at the time, and offers 4-player co-op while the rest mostly went with 2-player. This story is forgettable, but the gameplay is solid and enjoyable. While there may be better games in the genre out there, if you do have an Xbox, and especially a few friends to play co-op with, you'll have a fun time with this one. NGP from me.
Wow. I thought a lot of
I'm
people would rip
surprised.
this one. Like, I guess
Yeah.
Garlisle kind of did.
I thought so too. I recently I haven't been reading through the fullness of each commentary that I select. I kind of just do it based on who's sharing and who hasn't had something on in a while and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so there might be a whole group of people that are besmirching the title over in our Discord. You'd have to find out. But a random sample speaks to something.
Sure.
There is one more, and it's from Cecil. This is a game where the story behind its creation is so much more interesting than the game itself. Not that it's bad, far from it, but the convoluted tree of D&D license ownership of who had the rights to what and how the company landed with the broad D&D license but no access to the popular titles that people actually cared about is absolutely wild. To call this a Diablo wannabe wouldn't be accurate when this was explicitly designed to be an answer to Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. Itself, another semi-popular hack and slash they couldn't get the specific license to. And compared to Dark Alliance, Heroes is fine, adequate, actually quite good in places, but overall, just okay. Forever to be overshadowed by its own real-life backstory.
I forgot about Dark Alliance. I'm sure people are going to be listening and screaming at us the whole episode. They're like, please make the comparison, because I know of that game, but I've never played it, and so that's why it wasn't on my mind, but it's so similar. Like,
I don't know.
It's so similar.
For now, we are setting aside Dungeons & Dragons Heroes, and we are going to randomly select from our retro master list. The only stipulations, the game needs to be 15 years old or older on any console, any genre, from our retro master list that was generated by you, our community, our listeners. Randomizing now. We are going to be playing an older game that first released in 1986 exclusively in Japan for the Family Computer Disk System. Or
Okay. Hey, that's a nice change of pace. I gotta say, we've been living in the 2000s.
I know, we've been living.
Crazy.
Yeah. The game has been re-released a number of times for a number of consoles. It was first released internationally for the Super Nintendo in 1993 as a part of a compilation. Since then, it's been ported to the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and emulation all the way through the Switch.
Yeah. The Virtual Console.
It is a Nintendo product, and it is from from the single most noted IP of all time.
Okay.
The composer is Koji Kondo. The designer and producer is Shigeru Miyamoto. The game that we're going to be playing for the next 7 days is called Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels.
The Lost Levels. I thought it was called the Secret Levels. Okay.
So it was released again later as it was called just The Lost Levels in Super Mario All-Stars. That's when it came to Super Nintendo.
All-Stars.
I don't know if it matters which one you play. I think I would say we can play the Super Nintendo one or the OG one. Yeah. I think they're going to be comparable.
I'm pumped. Isn't this supposed to be like more challenging, Mario?
Hold on. I've played this on the compilation. I have played this on the compilation.
I think it's challenging.
It's a follow-up to the original 1985. It's a sequel, which I never knew that it was a sequel. When it was called The Lost Levels, I thought it was like cut content.
I thought so. Well, is it not? It might be that, or started as that, and they made it into a game.
And we'll do our research this week and let you know all about it next week. Find a copy of Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels for the Famicom or any other. Play it along with us this next week.
We have a Discord server. You can be a part of it. It's free, I promise. All you have to do is go to discord.gg/newgameplus. We'll give you $500 when you join the Discord.
That's not true.
My fingers were crossed.
I immediately got an email from our lawyer saying, tell them that's not true, before he was even done with the sentence. We want to say thank you to those of you who support New Game Plus on patreon.com, including our director level supporters who truly go above and beyond in just supporting the show in such cool ways. Bro Jim, Super Hypered, the Kentucky Kid, Siegfried. Want to say thank you to Shoebox Games for being a patron for the first time this week.
Shoebox.
Appreciate you. And of course, a big old shout out to our large list of producer level supporters. You guys are our bread and butter. Those people include Alex, Alias X, Marley and Antonin, Arlen Yuki, Ben, Big Dude, Craig, Dustin's 5 o'clock Shadow, Garlisle, Hallex Harold, Hey Brother, J. Robert, Jake, Jared, Jordan, Justin, Kenny's Beard, Glenn, Corey, Levi, Maxima, Megatroid, Miss Muso, Not Enough Dog, Riff, Sajin, Shane, Shauna, Stephen Fox, Psycho Mantis, Thomas Turtle, Unbedavable, and Zion. You guys are some of our favorite people in the entire universe.
Y'all all would be at our D&D table.
Y'all are some of our people ever.
You can find us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. All of those links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our video episode was edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we play Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels.
Wow.
Until then, I'm still a hero.
I'm also a hero.
I'm a hero.
And this has been New Game Plus.